There was exactly one bed, one couch that folded out into something worse than the floor, and one very calm man currently informing Nora Vance that this was, in his professional opinion, not a whole thing. It was, in fact, a whole thing. 12 hours earlier, Nora Vance had exactly 4 minutes to make her flight, and she was going to spend every single one of them arguing with Sam Whitfield about a PowerPoint transition. "Fate is unprofessional," she said, wheeling her carry-on through the terminal at a clip that made the little wheels shriek against the tile. "It looks like a screensaver from 2004. "Fate is classic," Sam said, easily keeping pace beside her, despite the garment bag slung over one shoulder and a laptop bag threatening to slide off the other. "You just don't trust anything that isn't a hard cut. I trust things that work. Hard cuts are jarring in a room full of executives who've been awake since 5 a.m. So is losing the Kowalski account because our deck looked like a middle school slideshow." He grinned at her, and that was the problem with Sam Whitfield in one sentence. He grinned like he had all the time in the world, like missing a flight or losing an account or any other catastrophe was just weather he'd stand in without an umbrella. 3 years of sharing an office wall at Bellwether Marketing had taught Nora that his calm wasn't laziness. It was a kind of stubbornness dressed up as ease. He simply refused to be rattled, and it made her want to rattle him on principle. They made the flight. Barely. Nora spent the first hour of the 2-hour flight to Chicago pointedly not talking to him, which mostly meant staring very hard at her laptop screen while he hummed something under his breath in the seat beside her, because of course, they'd been seated together. Diane in HR had booked the travel, and Diane in HR thought it was efficient to seat coworkers together and did not appear to understand that some coworkers required a buffer zone of at least one stranger to function. By the time they landed, Nora had almost forgotten she was annoyed. Almost, the trouble started at the hotel. "There's been a mix-up," the front desk clerk said. She was young, apologetic, tapping at her keyboard with the specific desperation of someone about to deliver bad news to 2 tired travelers at 9 p.m. "Your company account only shows one room booked under Bellwether Marketing for tonight. A king suite. It looks like the second reservation didn't go through. Some kind of system error on our end. I'm so sorry." "One room," Nora repeated, in the tone of someone confirming a diagnosis. "We're fully booked for a medical conference this weekend," the clerk said. "There's not a single other room in the building, and I've checked the 2 hotels within walking distance. Also full. I can offer a cot, complimentary breakfast, and a 20% discount on the room rate." Nora looked at Sam. Sam looked at Nora. "I'll call Diane," Nora said. "It's 10 o'clock in her time zone. She won't pick up," Sam said. "I'll call her anyway." She called her anyway. Diane did not pick up. Nora stood in the lobby, phone still warm against her ear from the 4 rings that led to voicemail, and did the math on her options. Sleep in a lobby chair, which the hotel's overnight security guard was already eyeing with mild concern. Find a room somewhere in a city she didn't know at 10 p.m. during a citywide medical conference, or share a suite. A large suite, the clerk had said, with a pull-out sofa, with the man who had not 30 minutes ago argued with her about PowerPoint transitions with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. "It has a pull-out couch," Sam said, reading her face correctly. "I'll take the couch. You take the bed. It's not a whole thing. It's a little bit of a thing. It's a small thing. A thinglet." He picked up his garment bag. "Come on, Vance. I promise not to snore audibly enough to end your career." The suite was, annoyingly, very nice. Floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out over a river lit gold with streetlights, a sitting area with a couch that did in fact fold out into something resembling a bed, and a single king mattress that dominated the far room like it knew exactly what kind of tension it was about to cause. Nora set her suitcase down at the foot of the bed with more force than necessary. "You can have first shower," Sam said, already unzipping his garment bag and hanging his conference suit with a care that surprised her. She hadn't pegged him as someone who ironed things. "I've got some calls to make anyway. West Coast office is still awake." "Thanks," she hesitated in the doorway of the bathroom. "Sam, thank you for not making this weirder than it has to be." He looked up from his phone, and for a second the easy grin dropped into something quieter, something she didn't have a name for yet. "Why would I make it weird? We're adults. We've got a big pitch tomorrow. Priority 1 is sleep, Priority 2 is not embarrassing ourselves in front of Kowalski's team, and priority 52 is whatever weirdness might exist about a couch. 52 feels generous. I'm an optimist. She closed the bathroom door before he could see her smile, because if there was one thing 3 years of proximity had taught her, it was that Sam Whitfield noticed everything, and she did not currently have the energy to explain why the sight of him folding his suit jacket over a chair had done something unwelcome to her chest. The Kowalski pitch went well. Better than well. Sam had the kind of easy charisma in a boardroom that made people lean forward instead of check their phones, and Nora had the kind of precision that made every number he said sound like it had been carved rather than calculated. They worked like two halves of a machine neither of them had built on purpose. By the end of the meeting, Diane Kowalski herself, no relation to the account name, a coincidence that had generated approximately 400 jokes over the past 2 weeks, was nodding along and asking about a Q3 start date. Afterward, in the elevator down to the lobby, Sam turned to her with an expression of frank astonishment. "You didn't even glance at your notes for the retention numbers." "I don't need notes for numbers, I understand." "That's terrifying." "You're terrifying." He said it like a compliment, which, from Sam, it was. "We should celebrate. There's a place 2 blocks from the hotel that does a very serious old-fashioned." "I looked it up on the flight." "You looked up a bar on the flight instead of finalizing the deck." "I finalized the deck at 4 a.m. this morning." "A man is allowed hobbies." She should have said no. She had every reason to say no. An early flight the next day, a mountain of follow-up emails. The small, persistent voice in the back of her head that had been warning her for roughly 2 years now, that whatever she felt when Sam Whitfield smiled at her like that was not a professional feeling and needed to be quietly filed away and never opened again. "One drink," she said instead. The bar was dim and half empty and smelled like orange peel and good whiskey. They sat at a corner table and 2 drinks in, because 1 drink had predictably become 2. The conversation had drifted somewhere Nora hadn't expected. Not work, not Kowalski, not the deck, but the actual shape of Sam's life. His younger sister, who was finishing a nursing degree and texted him increasingly elaborate memes about hospital shifts. The apartment he'd almost bought 2 years ago and backed out of at the last minute because something about it felt wrong, though he still couldn't say what. The fact that he'd wanted, at 19, to be a high school teacher and had somehow ended up in marketing instead, a fact that seemed to embarrass him slightly, like he was confessing to a crime. "Why does that embarrass you?" Nora asked. "Because it means I gave up on something," he said, turning his glass in slow circles on the table. "Not dramatically, just quietly. 1 semester I was going to be a teacher, and then I needed a summer job, and the summer job turned into a real job, and 11 years later I'm arguing about PowerPoint transitions in Chicago. You're good at this job, I know I am. That's not the same as it being the thing I meant to do." He looked up at her, and there was something unguarded in his face that she hadn't seen before, not in 3 years of office walls and shared meetings. "What about you? What did 19-year-old Nora want?" 19-year-old Nora wanted to run a nonprofit that helped small towns keep their local newspapers alive, she said, and laughed a little at how it sounded out loud, this old, soft ambition she hadn't spoken in years. Very idealistic, very unfunded. That's not embarrassing. That's just early. Early for what? For doing it, he said, like it was obvious. You've got 15 more years before anyone gets to call anything a failure. You're just early. She didn't have a response for that. She sat there instead, watching the ice melt in her glass, aware, in a way she hadn't let herself be aware of before that talking to Sam Whitfield in a dim bar in a city neither of them lived in, felt less like an accident of a canceled hotel room and more like something she'd been circling for a very long time without admitting it. "We should get back," she said finally. "Early flight." "Yeah," he said. "We should." Neither of them moved for another 10 minutes. Back at the suite, the air had changed in some way Nora couldn't name. Thicker, somehow, charged with the ordinary intimacy of 2 people who'd had 2 drinks and an hour of honesty, and now had to fold out a couch 4 feet from where the other one slept. "I've got it," Sam said, wrestling with the couch cushions. There's a mechanism somewhere in here that I do not understand. Let me help. I don't need Sam." Let me help." He stepped back, hands up, mock surrendering, and she knelt by the couch and found the release lever tucked under the far cushion, the one he'd clearly missed in 3 failed attempts. The frame unfolded with a metallic groan, and between the two of them, they wrestled a thin mattress into place, and by the time it was done, they were both a little out of breath and standing very close together in the lamplight, closer than the task had strictly required. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You're welcome." Neither of them stepped back. It would have been easy, in that moment, for something to happen. She could feel the pull of it, the low gravity of standing this close to someone she had spent 3 years very carefully not thinking about in exactly this way. She could see it in his face too, the same recognition, the same quiet O of two people finally looking directly at something they'd been sidestepping. "I should let you sleep," he said, and there was something rough at the edge of his voice that hadn't been there a minute ago. "Right," she said. "Yes." She went to bed. She did not sleep for a long time. The client, it turned out, wanted a full week of workshops. An unplanned extension that came through in an email from Diane at 8, the next morning. The words, "Please extend your stay." All approved. Sorry for the short notice, landing on Nora's phone like a small, delighted catastrophe. 6 more nights. 6 more nights of the couch and the bed and the 4 feet of carpet between them. They fell into a rhythm. Mornings were coffee from the shop on the corner, the same order every day. Hers black, his with too much cream, a fact she teased him about relentlessly, and he defended with genuine wounded pride. Days were client workshops, long ones, full of whiteboards and revised timelines, and Nora found herself watching him work in a way she hadn't let herself before. The way he drew people out in a room made quiet colleagues feel safe enough to disagree with a VP, remembered the names of everyone's kids and pets from casual mentions 3 days prior. Evenings were the hardest, and the best. They stopped pretending, somewhere around night 3, that they needed a reason to talk after dinner. They'd sit on opposite ends of the unfolded couch, Nora's feet tucked under her, a bottle of hotel room wine between them, and talk about everything and nothing. Her complicated relationship with her mother, his slow, ongoing process of forgiving his father for leaving when he was 12, the specific loneliness of being the funny one in every room, which people mistook for not needing anyone. On the 4th night, during a thunderstorm that rattled the windows and knocked out half the block's power, they ended up sitting side by side on the fold-out couch by candlelight. The hotel had handed out emergency candles with a cheerful lack of concern, and Nora found herself close enough to Sam that she could feel the warmth of his arm through her sleeve. "Can I tell you something?" Sam said, "that I've never said out loud before. Always. I asked Diane to seat us together on the flight, on purpose. I told her I had motion sickness and needed an aisle seat next to someone I knew, which is a complete fabrication. I have never once been motion sick in my life." He was looking at the candle, not at her, which she understood now was how Sam confessed things, sideways at objects, never straight at the person. "I've been finding reasons to sit next to you for about a year now. I don't know what I thought was going to happen. I think I just wanted to be near you and didn't know how to say it any other way." The storm kept rattling the windows. Nora's heart was doing something complicated and loud in her chest. "I called dibs on the aisle seat next to yours in March," she said, "for the Denver trip. I told the travel coordinator it was because I get claustrophobic in middle seats. I have never once been claustrophobic in my life." Sam turned to look at her, then, and there it was. The whole quiet, unguarded weight of a year of both of them circling the same thing without saying it, finally spoken into a hotel room lit by candles during a thunderstorm neither of them had asked for. "Nora? Yeah, I really want to kiss you right now, and I also don't want to ruin the best year of coworker friendship either of us has ever had. So I'm going to need you to tell me which of those outcomes you'd prefer, because I genuinely cannot tell from your face, and it is killing me." She laughed. A real laugh, surprised out of her, and something in it broke the last of the careful distance between them. "Kiss me, Sam." He did. It was slow and careful, the kind of kiss that asked a question rather than making a demand, his hand coming up to rest against her jaw like she was something he'd been waiting a long time to be allowed to touch. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers, and she could feel him smiling. "So," he said. That happened. That happened. Do you want to talk about what it means? Or should we let the thunderstorm take credit and pretend it was purely weather-related? I think, Nora said, the thunderstorm gets an assist, not full credit. They didn't figure out all of it that night. The logistics of an office romance, what they'd tell Diane, whether Bellwether had a policy about coworkers, dating that they'd need to quietly research on a work computer in a way that wouldn't flag IT. They didn't need to figure it out that night. That night, they just sat together on the fold-out couch until the power came back on, talking in low voices about nothing important, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her, the whole charged distance of the last 4 nights, finally, gently, closed. The last night of the trip, the hotel called to apologize again for the original booking error and offered a further discount on the stay, which Sam accepted with a startlingly straight face while Nora had to leave the room to keep from laughing. You know, he said after she came back, after they'd packed most of their bags for the flight home, we should send Diana a thank you card for the booking error, for the booking error. He pulled her in by the waist, easy as anything, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. Best mistake that woman's ever made. She's going to ask why. We'll tell her it's classified. He kissed her temple, national security. The fate of the Kowalski account depended on it. You're ridiculous. You like it. She did. That was the whole terrifying, wonderful problem. She liked all of it. The ridiculous and the careful and the slow 4 nights it had taken to get here. And as she zipped her suitcase closed, and as she reciprocated, grinning at her in the doorway of a hotel room that had started as an inconvenience and become something else entirely, she thought that maybe some mistakes were worth thanking someone for. On the flight home, Diane had booked them in separate rows. Neither of them said anything to fix it. Some things they'd decided, without saying so out loud, were worth being early for, the end.